Thank you for joining us today. This is part of a departmental training with the San Diego Unified School Psychologists Department. And in our ongoing series of Google trainings, today we are going to cover the basics of Google Sheets. And we're going to see a whole bunch of different things today. And here's kind of a list of what we're going to be covering. We're going to talk about the basics of how all things Google works. And in our previous presentations for Docs and Drive, and also Google Forms, we learned that all things Google happen in the cloud. The cloud is a euphemism for things we access through the internet. It's actually the Google server farms. Think of a Costco warehouse times 4 with floor-to-ceiling, super high-end computers called servers there. And everything we do in Google resides at these Google server farms. And at near the speed of light, our computer interacts back and forth from our computer through our browser, in this case, Google Chrome, because you only ever want to use Google Chrome when you're doing anything Google, so that all of your Google products, your apps are optimized. And then all of that data, in this case, Google Sheets, are being recorded. Every click of the mouse, every stroke of the keyboard is all being recorded in the Google server farms, in the cloud. And so that's the nature of all things Google. So we just have to remember that things can change rapidly in Google. We could be using Google Sheets in the morning, go to lunch and come back, and Google Sheets, the user interface looks totally different because the men and women, very smart men and women, engineers, they can change things anytime they want, and they do because they're always trying to make it better. So we're going to be talking about formatting today. We often hear the terms formatting and editing, and sometimes we use those two terms, interchangeably. But the truth is, editing is kind of like when you add a word, add a sentence, add a paragraph or data in the case of Sheets, or you remove them. That's editing. Formatting is where you change the appearance of something. So we see up here this word Google's made up of 5 different colors, if I counted that right. And so that's been formatted differently than the word Sheets, which has been formatted with green, which is different than just the regular black that we see with basics. And of course, Zoom has that Zoom blue color. This is all examples of formatting. And then down here, we have bullet points where we're kind of going through. Those are examples of formatting. So we're going to get into the formatting of Sheets and talk about how to deal with the spreadsheet, basically how to deal with columns and with rows. And so one of the tools that we're going to show you today is called Paint Format. And it's a tool that Google got the idea from Microsoft. In Microsoft, it's called Format Painter. But in Google, it's called Paint Format. And so that's just a very quick way to be able to grab certain formatting and then copy it to somewhere else and kind of paint it onto other words or other cells with data in it. So we're going to go over some column and row formatting, how to widen a column to the largest data set so that we can see everything in it. Or we will be moving some cells around, be doing some copying and pasting and paste special. And paste special is when there might be a formula behind some data, but we want to get rid of the formula and just keep the data. Well, we can copy that formula with the data and then do a paste special and just put it back without the formula, just the data. And we'll show you how to do that. We're going to be doing some navigating around the worksheets, etc. Positives and negatives. All right. First thing we need to know is that Microsoft Excel, because it resides on your computer's hard drive and not in the cloud, it's a much more robust program. Stated differently, it's a much larger application or software program, and therefore it's a much more powerful program. Microsoft Excel is on order of about 100 times more powerful than Google Sheets. That doesn't mean that Google Sheets is worthless. It's not, because most of us at the district, even in the financing departments or payroll, if we're using Excel, we're only using like 10% of what Excel can do just to manipulate data and numbers and payroll accounts and things like that. We can do all of that in Google Sheets. The benefit of Google Sheets is that you can share your Google Sheet, your workbook, with its various worksheets on it. A workbook is what you call a Google Sheet file that might have many worksheets in it. The collective whole, that one file, is called a workbook. But we can take that workbook and we can share it. For example, with the school psychologists, you could have one Google Sheet that maybe 10 different psychologists from a different part of the district, or a certain part of the district, I should say, are able to access, and be able to, each psychologist can add their data to their particular worksheet in a particular psychologist workbook. And so that's the main benefit of all things Google Sheets. Because it exists in the cloud, we can access it from anywhere in the world. Or more specifically, if you're at work, you can access it there. If you're at home, you can do it there. If you happen to go on vacation, but you need to take care of something from another part of the world, as long as you have an internet connection, by golly, you can access your Google Sheet, and you can add things to it and delete it and do whatever you need to get your work done. So the positives of Google Sheets is that it's accessible 24/7 anywhere in the world with an internet connection. The negative is simply this, that it just isn't as powerful as Microsoft Excel. But again, most of us are only using 5 to maybe 8% of the features of Microsoft Excel. And so Google Sheets is just fine. And I'll just say this, that any formula and function that you can use in Microsoft Excel, you can also use in Google Sheets. The negative aspect of that is you may not get as much help in Google Sheets trying to figure out what that formula and how those functions work, just because Microsoft Excel has formula wizards and other things that will help you create these formulas. And so you have to kind of know where you're going generally in Sheets. They are providing more hints of what to do, but I would say that's probably the biggest negative. So on a whole, it's a net positive because you can do anything you really need to in Sheets that you used to be able to or could do in Microsoft Excel. All right, so we kind of just touched on that, formulas and positives and negatives. Any formula that works in Excel will also work in Sheets. So there you go. Sorting and filtering, we're going to talk about that and show how that works. We'll show you a demonstration of a chart. And this is a good example right here of how the very smart men and women, Google engineers, have been adding features all the time to Sheets. As our internet speeds increase, larger bandwidth, able to send more data back and forth, Google keeps making Sheets and all the other Google apps bigger and bigger with more features. And so we're going to see that charts now have twice as many features as they did just a year or two ago, and they keep adding more. So we'll see if there's some new ones. All right, we talked a little bit about this, but sharing, whether we want to share and just have someone as a viewer or a commenter, a viewer and a commenter, or an editor, like in the case where all of the school psychologists have the access to a certain Google Sheet and they can each add or take away things from that. So that's pretty helpful. And then I talked about this before we started the class a little bit about flash fill. And this is a narrow form of artificial intelligence. It's called flash fill. It's a form of machine learning, and it started in Excel 2013 and then continued in 2016, 2019, and all the way to the current Excel today. And the reason we're in a Sheets class and I'm talking about this is because if you get stuck and you can't figure out in Sheets how to create a formula with the necessary functions and everything else in it to make it work. In other words, if you're trying to manipulate data on your Google Sheets spreadsheet and you can't figure out how to get names moved from one column to another, or take names from two different columns and put them into a different order, we're going to show how to do that. And you can't figure out what the formula and functions are to do that. And that can be very difficult, depending on what you're trying to do. It can be very complex. I will show a demonstration of how to separate first and last names out of a single column into a last names column and a first name column. And I give an example that works. It's not a great example, but it works. It's a very complex formula. It actually has nested functions. We'll talk about this more, but just know that functions are kind of like the action word of a formula. Kind of like what a verb is to a sentence, a function is to a formula, if you want to go that route. And so flash fill, we're going to demonstrate this. After we go through our formulas and functions, I'm going to show you in Excel how, without any knowledge of formulas or function, no knowledge whatsoever, it will automatically copy the pattern that you are trying to show it in flash fill and will manipulate your data. For example, take the last name out of a column that has both first and last names in it, and then put it in another column, and then put the first name out of that original column into a third column, and you move things around, and it just does it because it's following patterns. That's a form of artificial intelligence, narrow AI, machine learning, and it's called flash fill. And why am I going to bring this up, and why am I going to demonstrate it? Because as you will see, as we get into Google Sheets, that you can take any Excel workbook or worksheet and turn it into a Google Sheet. So if we have some data, we have to do some tricky manipulating to, maybe it might be easier to do it in Excel without using formulas and functions, letting the artificial intelligence do it for us. And then we simply just turn that Excel workbook into a Google Sheets workbook. And we're going to show you how to do all that. So at this point, be thinking about all that you see here, and you may have some questions about something other than what you see here. Just know that as we get to the end of this presentation, that we will open up for questions, open-ended questions, whatever you have, whatever you're interested in. We can go down whatever rabbit hole you want. Also, a week from today, we have an open lab where you can actually bring a worksheet or workbook that you're working on and share it on the screen in kind of an open lab setting. We can go deep dive down a rabbit hole into whatever topic that you want. Of course, as I go along this presenting, please note that you can unmute your microphone at any time and interrupt, and actually it's not interrupting, just interject that you have a question or you want to see something again, or something that you saw sparked an idea that you were wondering about before. And if you want to get an answer to that in real time, please do unmute yourself and join the dialogue. All right, so that's what we're going to cover today. And I'm going to just shrink this down. We'll make reference to that a little bit later. And again, this is just a reminder that we do have the San Diego Unified Office Skills Training YouTube channel. And in that YouTube channel, we have dozens and dozens and dozens of videos. In fact, if you just click on the playlist, since we're talking to the San Diego Unified Psychologists Department, we actually have a playlist for just you all. In fact, we have, looks like 5 videos already. So from our Google Forms training class, we had 26 views already 11 days ago. Google Drive, 43 views. So I appreciate that these are getting used. All of our long trainings that are a couple of hours long or an hour and a half are being viewed. And I also threw in a few extras, new videos that I had done just the last few weeks or whatever in there, just so it's available to you. But of course, you can always simply just go back and look at any of the many videos that we have. And we have, I think the total right now is somewhere getting close to about 50. And so, again, you can look at the playlist if you want to just see all of the Excel ones, or if you want to see all of the Google ones or whatever. That's an easy way to kind of go as well. So remember, that's available to you. And I would just add that this wonderful worksheet that Diana put together for all of us to show when our trainings are. Here we are on March 5th today doing the Google Sheets Basics Part 1. And then, of course, next week we have the drop-in. It's like an open lab. But if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a link here. And if you click on that link, it'll take you directly to our San Diego Unified Office Skills Training webpage. And of course, click on the playlist, and then you can go find the Psychologist Department playlist and be able to find all of the videos, including the one we are recording right now. All right, so we're going to just go ahead and get started here. And the first thing I'm going to do is what I always do, is I'm going to jump into my drive. And this is my sandy.net Google Drive. And all of us at the school district that have a sandy.net email address, we are part of the sandy.net Google domain. So what does that mean? That means that we have some special privileges using our drive. For example, we get unlimited storage. That's fantastic. We don't ever get a prompt saying, hey, Mr. J, you've got a lot of stuff stored there. Here, pay us money and we'll give you more room for that. We also have an administrator who could change some of the features that we have. Like, for example, this shared drive that I have is for all of our IT trainers that I work with. And so we have different calendars that we share together and all of that. And so our drive for Sandy with our sandy.net email address is very much for us and geared towards our success in the district. And we're grateful that we have our own sandy.net Google domain. So as we can see here in my drive, I've got all my folders right here. And if you were part of our drive class from about a month ago, or you've watched the video, then you'll know that I like to keep mine in a certain order, and I like to keep it in alphanumeric order by name. And that simply just means that it starts off with punctuation marks, then it goes to numbers ascending like 2020, then it goes higher to 2023, and then it goes to the alphabet. I don't have a B one, but I have A and a C, and then it keeps going until you get all the way to the Z's, and then there I have some Z's at the end. And so this makes it much easier when you're trying to find something, so to keep things ordered. So right now for our class today, I'm going to create a new folder. And because I want it to show up here in the prime position, I'm just going to start off with about 6 dots or so, because that's going to force it into the front because it's alphanumeric, punctuation before numbers in ascending order, and then all the way to the ABCs. Then I'm just going to call it today's folder. And that way, when I see it later, then I will know that it is something that I can go ahead and toss out. I don't have to worry about looking at it or spend any time with that. And so there it is. I'm going to create it. It's going to show up where? Right here in the prime position. And because it's so easy, I just right click on that and I can go over here and click on red. And now it stands out a little bit. Looks like some of the other ones, but that's okay. A little bit easier to get to. And so I'm going to double click on this, and I just invite you to look over here at our navigation bar. This is like our breadcrumb trail. Right now we're in my drive. These are the folders that I have in my drive. I just created a new one. And when I drill down or double click on this, it shows that we're now inside the today's folder. And it says, of course, we can drop files here. And you can see part of the desktop of my desktop computer here. And I just have some stuff. If I grab it, I could bring it over and it will make a copy of it and put it in here. In fact, that blue banner down there says, hey, you can drop stuff right in here into the today's folder. Why is it the today's folder? Because if we look at the breadcrumb trail, that's where we are. I don't need that file. But just as a reminder, we can also grab folders with multiple folders inside it and multiple files, and also bring that in. And where will it land? Whatever folder I have open right now, which is the today's folder, and it would do that. All right, so I just opened up this Sheets version of the Excel class, Excel spreadsheet. And we can see that it's an Excel spreadsheet up here in the left-hand corner. In fact, we see we're on the Home tab ribbon with our clipboard group, font group, alignment, and all of that. And we have all of these different tabs that we can go to with these different various ribbons and whatnot. This is definitely 100% Excel. And we can see that we have a column of some certain food types and some other more perhaps tastier, sugary kind of stuff. We have some strange little hashtags there that we'll explore in a little bit. We have some numbers and all of that. And then we have some colors here and some more numbers. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is that both in Sheets currently and also in Excel, Excel doesn't care that this is food. It doesn't care that these are tasty treats or that these are numbers. What it sees is, I'm going to click on something, it sees that I have a letter string. Stated differently, a string of letters. Over here, I have a number string. It happens to be a single digit. Here's a 2-number string. And each one of these are letter strings, or these are 2 letter strings, 2 strings in a row, like peanut butter is. Chocolate's just a single string. And remember that. And when I click on it, we see up in the formula bar, we see the letter values. And again, it doesn't know that chocolate is something really tasty and we love to eat that. In fact, it's real easy to eat too much of it. It doesn't know that. It doesn't care. It's just looking at data. That's all a spreadsheet is manipulating data, allowing us to do all kinds of marvelous things. So I'm showing this to you in Excel first because we're going to turn this into a Google Sheet, and you're going to see that it's going to look exactly the same. It's a little bit different as far as the features and how we can do the different functions and the different features or whatever, and drop down menus and whatnot. It looks a little bit different, the user interface, but our worksheet's going to be essentially the same. And this one happens to be called Sheet 1. And I'm going to show you the next one that we're going to go to. It's called last name, comma, space first. And over here, when we make this into a Google Sheet, we're going to put a formula in G1 that's going to make it say Gable, comma, space, Clark. And that's what we're going to do there. And then over here in H1, we're going to fix the problem with these names that aren't in the proper case. like Turner and Bogart and McCall, and poor Lauren got her first name as well. We're going to fix all those with formulas and functions. We're going to do that on the last name comma space first. Then we have another example where we're going to use a very complex formula with nested functions to remove the last name out of the A column and put it into the B column, and then put the first names out of the A column into a C column. And so we're going to demonstrate how that works. And then we have some little short versions of our pretend class with our pretend students with some different data, and we have some issues here with some formatting that can't quite see the whole headers. We're going to talk about easy, quick ways to be able to deal with all that. And then we have our pretend class, and we happen to have, wow, look at that. It's all the way at the bottom. Let me bring that to the top. We have a pretend school with pretend students, about 473 of them, and we're going to be manipulating this data to some degree. And then we're going to get to a bar chart where we're going to take some very simple data of returning students that are male and female to a school, and then a separate indication as to what the new students are that are male, and then the new students that are female coming to that same school. And we're going to put this into a bar graph. So we're going to explore how Google Sheets allows us to be able to do graphs that way. And again, just remember that whatever you can do today in Google Sheets, as far as a chart or as far as anything of the features in Google Sheets, there will be more features coming down the road as computers get faster, the internet gets quicker, more bandwidth and whatnot. Then Google will continue to beef up Google Sheets so that it starts to get closer and closer to look like Microsoft Excel. All right, so there we go. We have all of these right here, and I'm just going to go ahead and close this because we don't need it right now. And I want to bring in that Excel file into Drive. All right, and if you've been part of our other classes, you know that we can bring in Microsoft products like Microsoft Word and Excel, and Adobe products like PDFs. We can bring them into our Drive, and Google will let us do some work with those. And so that's what we're going to do. So I can either go to the new button up here and then say upload a file. But remember, we're already in today's folder. It's just faster to right click. You get the exact same menu. And we're going to bring in a file real quick. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on upload file. And remember, it says upload because we're going to take it off of the computer that I'm using right now. And then by virtue of our browser, we're going to take it to the Google server farms, which is where our Google account is. And in this case, it's my Google Drive. And so I'm going to say upload a file. And it's going to say, okay, where do you want to go? And fortunately, in my file browser, it's already gone to the exact place that I want. And so the one that we just looked at, the Excel's workbook that we just looked at, was called Sheets version of Excel class demo. And so I'm just going to, I can click one time with that and then click down here. But remember, Mr. J always says, go ahead and double click, triple click, and right click, and you'll never know when you're going to be able to do things faster. So this is the one I want, double click. And so down here, it says it's uploading it, and boom, there it is. All right. So I like to keep my, my Google Drive in grid mode because then I get to see a preview. And for some reason, the computer, the internet, whatever it is, maybe it's the sandy.net Google domain, is moving slowly because I should see a preview, like with those words. We saw tomato and onions, we saw chocolate, and what was it, peanut butter, and a few other things. We should be able to see like a little example of that, but we don't see it yet. Sometimes you can force it just by saying refresh, but there, oh, there we go. And so it's really tiny, but this is over here where it says onions. Over here was peanut butter and chocolate and some other stuff. And here was our colors down there. Okay, great. So this is 100% an Excel file. Right now, I'm just going to right click over here and I'm going to go down to Google Sheets and I'm going to say open up a blank spreadsheet. And where's it going to put it? Remember our breadcrumb trail. It's in today's folder. So this is why we create folders and then we go and find stuff and add things and upload things or whatever. So I just want to open up a blank one. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go up here and I want to click on it. I'm just going to call it practice. That way, and I recommend this to you as well. When you do label something like this, or sometimes I put a bunch of Z's or question marks or something, those are indications to me, saving. Wow, that's a little bit slow. All right. So, okay, it did it. about 10 seconds. Usually it's about a half a second. So maybe our internet's a little bit slow today. But when we are interacting with this spreadsheet at near the speed of light, every click of the mouse, every stroke of the keyboard is interacting with the Google server farms. And again, think of those 4 times the size of a Google, 4 times the size of a Costco warehouse with floor to ceiling, top of the line computers. And all of our data is in a form of ones and zeros in something called data packets. And it's going back and forth at near the speed of light. And so that's why it can happen in like half a second if you've got a good connection, or if the internet's not real busy, it doesn't have gazillions of people using it at the moment. And so that's why I can like click on stuff and I can interact with it. There's a certain amount that's loaded into my browser. And again, everything's working really well right now with as far as all the stuff that's here. Why? Because I'm in my Google Chrome browser. And if I were in anything other than Google Chrome, like Firefox or Microsoft Edge or some other one, then most likely 90% of the time, all of your features that you have in Google are not going to work. In fact, when you go to the drop-down menus, there might be things that are entirely missing as far as the features there, because they won't work in Firefox or the other ones. So we want to make sure that we do that. So there it is. We just named it practice. And now we're looking at our user interface. We can see that the columns, just like in Excel, are named with letters. And if I keep on going, then it starts over. It says AA, AB, AC, AD, so on and so forth. And then I see the rows are also with numbers, just like in Excel. And then we have a quick access toolbar that Google does for us, which is really cool. And depending on what we're working on, this toolbar may change. And it does. And these are features, or it looks like we have about 25 of them right here. The most common features that we use, you probably recognize some like undo or Control Z, redo or Control Y. There's print. There's paint format. We're going to use that in just a little bit. And so we have all of these features that are right here. Just know this is not all of the features, but all of these features exist somewhere in these drop-down menus. And so if you haven't been to Google Sheets in a while, I definitely recommend you go back and you just kind of like poke around and see what's new. And you will find something new. Oh, look at this. Google's letting us know that now Google Sheets, just like in Excel, has this new feature called Timeline. And there it is. And if we want to know how to use Timeline, all we'd have to do is just Google it and say, how do you use the timeline feature in Google Sheets? And it will take you to the Google support pages, which will have all kinds of step-by-step instructions, screenshots, little videos and whatnot. That's pretty cool. And so just by clicking around, we can see what is new. And I will tell you, oh, there's another new one right down here. All of this stuff is new, data connectors. And a lot of what you see here has been added in the last year or 2 or 3. So if you go back a year or two, and so this is probably a good time to mention this. If you want to learn on the internet, any of the Google apps, doesn't matter if it's Drive, Forms, in this case, Sheets, and you find a video that says, learn how to use Google Sheets, and it's got 10 million viewers or viewings, and there's all these thumbs up, you're like, wow, that's the one that I want to watch. But look how old it is. If it's older than a year or two, doesn't matter if it has 100 million thumbs up views. If it's older than a year or two, you're only going to be able to learn about half of the features because half of those features didn't exist a year or two ago. And if it's 8 years old, maybe about 20% of these features existed. And so you're going to get a great, well-viewed video, YouTube video instructions on how to use Google Sheets from 8 years ago. So be careful when you're Googling to get information that you're going to find something that's close to current, because they're adding new things all of the time. So we just kind of did that. We just clicked on it, and I'm just kind of hovering right now. And so I can see that there's all these drop-down menus, and some of them have additional sub-menus indicated by the little arrows here. Oh, see the move thing? I can't use that because it's grayed out. That means that I probably don't have any data selected. And again, if we were in Firefox, you might have things that are grayed out or just not there entirely, not because we don't have data selected, but because Firefox won't make that particular feature work. All right. And sometimes in these drop down menus or these extra sub menus, there's sub menus. And so we just have to kind of like poke around to see what we have and where we can go and find what's there. There's all kinds of things that are available to us. And so it's a good idea to just kind of go through it and kind of get used to all of the different things that we can see. So right now, just for fun, I want to make this bigger so you all watching this video can see it a little bit more clearly. And so I'm going to go ahead and make this about 150, see if that works. That works a little bit better. And I'm just going to put, just going to hit the keyboard there a couple of times. I can either hit enter to set it, or I can just click somewhere else and it will automatically put it in there. So here I just added some letters. I just hit the keyboard, just stroked it with my left hand, and we can see the letter values up here. Looks like one big long pretend word. And right down here in cell B2, we know this is B2 because that's how you call every cell's name, by the column first and then by the row. And then up here in the name box, it tells us that it's B2 because that's selected. If I select the one below it, it's going to be B3, of course. So we're going to look at our quick access toolbar here, and there's some that we recognize quite a bit. Most of us do. Bold. All right, now it's bold. And then let's go ahead and try another one. Italicize. A couple things we want you to recognize here. First of all, in cell B2, both bold and italicize is in play. It's being used. It has been employed or deployed, if you want to look at it that way. And we can see there's kind of a bluish gray box around it. But notice up here in the formula bar, it's just the letter string with the letter values. And that's the way it's always going to remain. So if I decide to do my third formatting feature by making this bigger, it's not going to change the letter values. The letter values are still the same. We're just changing the formatting. So keep that in mind. And of course, we want it to stand out. Let's make it red. And right now it's the default Arial, but let's make it something cool. And I'll just pick the first one there. All right, now the Pacifico. So that's pretty cool. So I can make some changes and I can do some different things using our quick access toolbar and all of that. But just remember that whether I'm using numbers or letters, and I'll just click over here and I'll hit some numbers there real quick and set it. This is a number string and this is a letter string. And if I go in there and I, put my cursor in the middle and I hit, the space bar, now this is two letter strings. And these are the letter values, regardless of what this looks like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my drive, specifically into my today's folder. And I can see there's my untitled spreadsheet. Did I not title that? I thought I did. Okay, let's go back. Yes, it says practice. So now we need to consider for a moment what's happening. So remember that when I'm working on this, whatever I'm doing to it, changing the red or whatever, at near the speed of light, those data packets are going back and forth. Well, it's the same thing with our drive. That's a different application that has our worksheet in it. And it says untitled, but we can actually see our little lettering right there. It's kind of really tiny. But why does it say untitled spreadsheet when we actually named it? Well, maybe it just has to refresh. All right, there it is. It's switched to practice. Okay. So remember that when you do things in Google, it will make you crazy sometimes because you will move a folder around in your drive or you'll add something to, in this case, the practice spreadsheet, the Google Sheet, and then you'll go back to drive and you won't see it reflected there and you'll think, did I do something wrong? And certainly that's possible. But 9 times out of 10, it just takes a few seconds or a couple of minutes, depending on how fast the internet is working for you at that given moment. I will tell you the internet connection that I have is upwards of 100 megabits per second, which is very quick. And so it could be the Google server farm is slowing us down. It could be the sandy.net Google domain. If we're inside San Diego Unified, to get this data to the Google server farms, it has to go through the filters that our district has to protect us from phishing and from malware and cyber attacks and all that kind of stuff. So there's a number of reasons why it can slow down. It might just be that we have every student in the entire district right now is working on their Google something, and so it just might be slow at the server farm. We don't know, and so it will just take a few moments, or it might take a few minutes. I've seen things take as long as 20 plus minutes. So just keep that in the back of your mind. It'll help you understand what Google's doing and all that it's going through, and that hopefully it will catch up to whatever you're working on. All right, so there's our practice one. That's great. And here we have the Excel one. And so this is our school psychologist one from earlier. Don't forget, we have the YouTube videos. I'm going to move this out of the way so I don't have to keep, that's not where I wanted to put it. Let's try that again. There we go. There we go. All right. So we have access to that, and from there you can get to the YouTube channel. That would be great. So right now we just have the practice one open, okay? And we want to actually open up this Excel one that we saw earlier in Excel. And so I'm going to double click and watch what happens up here when I do this. Double click. So it's opening up a new one, and this is going to go by very quickly, but it says basically opening up this file called Sheets version of Excel class demo. And it was telling us, it happened so fast we weren't able to read it, but it was saying, hey, we're going to open up basically this Excel file, but we're going to open it up in Google Sheets. And sure enough, we look at this, there's our quick access toolbar, there's our drop-down menus. And if we go along, oh, there's the new timeline. And where was that next one? Oh, there's our data connectors. That's new. Yep, this looks exactly like Google Sheets. In fact, we see the Google Sheets icon right there, but take a look at this. That is actually the extension for a Microsoft Excel file. And we are still in a Microsoft Excel file. And I know that's a little bit confusing, but just remember that Google allows you to open up and even manipulate Microsoft files, in this case, Excel. Could be Word, we could do it as well. So just to show you, for example, in fact, let me make this bigger as we did before. We'll call it 150, maybe that'll show up a little better. That's a little too big, let's make it 125. All right, and so there's peanut butter. If I want to make it bold, I want to make it italicized, and I want to make it red, for example, I could do that. And I'm doing it, and it just said saving, and then about a second later, it said saved. And so I can do all kinds of stuff like that if I want to in Excel with the features of Sheets. But I'll tell you right now, spend any time in the Google chat rooms and the forums where they're discussing how the different apps work or don't work, weird things can happen. Everyone suggests do not do any serious manipulation of data with formulas or work that you expect to keep and have working correctly and properly for, your next presentation at work or whatever. Don't do any changes to an Excel file in Sheets, because you might work on something for several hours and come back tomorrow and those changes are gone. And so that kind of stuff happens all the time. So why on earth would Google allow us to do this? Well, it's nice that Google allows us to bring it in and we can make a few changes, and then maybe we could print it out or something. And that's kind of cool. We could do that. But it's not making any promises. And just remember that Microsoft and Google are very much competitors. And so the fact that Google lets us do this at all is amazing. But just know that everyone in the chat rooms for Google recommend that you don't do any serious work with that. So what they'd say instead is take that Excel file that we're able to manipulate in Google Sheets and make it 100% a Google Sheet. And how do we do that? We simply go to File, and we go down to this fifth feature here. It says Save as a Google Sheet. Now watch what happens up here in on these tabs when I go do that. So I'm going to say Save as a Google Sheet. It's going to open up a new one. And so there it is, the same thing. And of course, we want to make this 125, so it shows up. Oh, there's peanut butter. Okay, so we can unbold that, unitalicize it. We can make it back to black if we want. Okay, saving, save to drive. You'll notice there's no extension here saying that this is Excel. This is 100% a Google Sheet. All right. And so I'm going to go back to our original Excel file and just show you that it still has the extension. And all we did, just as a reminder, we went to File, Save as a Google Sheet. It opened up a new tab. And now these two look the same, well, other than peanut butter that's red and not red, but they are two separate files, two different spreadsheets. One of them is Excel, and the other one is 100% a copy, basically, of that Excel, but it's 100% a Google Sheet because there's no extension here. Let's go back to Drive. All right. Well, this is the one that's Excel that we turned into a 100% Google Sheet. It's not there. Oh, yeah, we remember that sometimes Drive takes a little bit of time. Oh, there it is. So there's the Excel version because you can tell by the X. Here's the 100% Google Sheet. All right, with the same exact data on there. Perfect. In fact, it still shows the red here, even though I remember going in and changing it back to black. So it's a little bit behind, a few seconds behind. No big deal. I'm going to go to the Sheets version, or I'm sorry, the Excel version of this Sheets document. And I'm just going to click right here. And very quickly, I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to dive down to Images. And I'm going to say Insert Images over Cells. And I'm going to say go to Google Images, which is online. And I'm going to search for my favorite, the ones I always use, horses, because we love horses here at this home. And so I get all of these pictures. And so I can simply click on one of these and then say insert. But remember, I always say double click on stuff and see if it works. And sure enough, it does. And it's going to put the picture right there. Remember, this is the Excel version. So now let's go back to Drive. Well, first we'll just go here. No picture of a horse. Even if we hit this 1,000 or 1,000,000 times, still no picture of a horse. Let's make that 125. All right. It's on the Excel version. Let's go back to our Drive. And of course, here's the Excel version. We don't see the horses yet. Eventually, it's going to show up. Could be one refreshing away, might be 25. So, well, it'll show up here in a minute. Just know this. Here's what we need to know. We started off with 100% Excel. We created a brand new copy that's 100% Google Sheets. Any changes I now make in the Google Sheets will not affect the original, and vice versa. There's a horse picture in here. It's going to show up here shortly, so you can see that it's actually in the Excel version, but it will not show up at any point in the Google version of it. So why would we want to keep this? Would we want to keep it? I suggest that we should. Remember, we get unlimited storage. So let's just talk about, creating folders inside stuff to make things easier. So rather than have two things that are named the same, both have a little green icon. One has a tiny little white X, and one the other has kind of like a weird plus sign, if you will. Almost looks like a realtor sign. Make it easier. Right click, new folder. What are we going to call it? We'll just call it Microsoft. And that way I can store all of my Microsoft files. And it's as easy as that. I just drag the Microsoft file and I just dump it in there. And now I don't have to see it, but it's in there somewhere. And why would I want to do that? Because maybe you might want to get, let's say your hard drive fails on your computer. But if you have your Microsoft stuff or Adobe things or other things stored in the cloud, you can simply double click on it, right click, or hit this little ellipsis, does the same thing, and say download. And you can bring it right back to your computer and put it whatever folder you want it to. You have that copy. That's pretty cool. So why not keep it? It's free. So it's over there. And now we can deal with this one right here. Of course, would be nice if we could see if the horse showed up. There it is. Thank you, Google, for obliging us. So we can see that there's a horse right there, but we go back to the Sheets version, and of course, we don't even see anything at all. Eventually, it will come back. There it is, but there's no horse because those are two totally separate spreadsheets now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to explore some formatting. So what we're going to do is I'm going to click on cell B4. It has the word tomatoes in it. We can see that it's a letter string, and here's the letter values. In fact, this is kind of small. Let's make it 150. Make it a little easier to see. All right. And again, we can use our quick access toolbar and we can start to change the formatting. You can see that bold's employed because it has a little box around it. Make it italicized. We'll go ahead and make it red. We'll change it to size, I don't know, 15. We'll change it from the default Calibri and make it something more exciting like Pacifico. All right. So here we have the letter string up here, just the letter values. And we've done some formatting to it. Specifically what? We did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different formatting features to make it look like that. If I come over here to peanut butter and I want to do the same thing, I have to go start doing it all again. Okay, so it was bold, it was italicized. Oh yeah, it was red. I remember that. What size was it? How many sizes are there? don't quite remember. I might have to go back and click there to figure it out. And what font was it? We might remember that it was the first one, Pacifico. That's easy. But we might be in a situation where we're using one of hundreds of different options that are there. And so I'm going to undo. Let's click over there to set that. So I'm going to undo those different formatting features. And so we're going to talk about this, the paint format. So I can simply click right here and then say paint format and come over here and just click on cell H2 that peanut butter is inside of. And boom, it automatically did it. It did all 5 exactly of the formatting features. It's kind of like it soaks up, the paint, if you will, and then it rolls it out with, the same colors and same format, essentially. Okay, that's great. So anytime I want to do that, I can click on it. And if I want, I can drag across a few of them and it will affect all of those. If I want to, I can hit this right here and I can do an entire row to infinity. There you go. And so now I did that. So that means if I come over here and I just put a number, it already has that formatting attached to it. So that's an option. So you can drag it, you can click on the name of a column or the name on a row or a couple of rows, and it will automatically do that. And again, let's just scroll up a little bit and do this one and just know that, yes, you can drag across all of them and do all of those. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. All right, get back to where we were. In fact, I'm going to redo a few because we know that we can undo and redo anytime if it's something that we just did. But what happens if we made all of these changes? Actually, I want to make sure I undo that one since that was an entire column. What happens if we start working on maybe this worksheet for a couple of hours, and then we come back to this and we're like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking before lunch? That looks terrible. I want to fix that. You certainly can't undo it at that point if you've been working somewhere else, because undo is linear in time. And so we need another way to be able to clear that formatting. And so there's a way that we can do that. And so if we just kind of look across our quick access toolbar, we don't see anything that does that. And so we look up here and we think, okay, is it file, edit, view, insert format? Well, it sounds like formatting. Let's see if it's in there somewhere. Oh, sure enough, there down at the bottom, clear formatting. Okay. And I will tell you that it used to exist somewhere up here on this quick access toolbar. They took it down. I'm convinced of it. Did they tell us that? No. Google's changing stuff all the time. And so just know you're going to be scratching your head going, well, wasn't it there? Well, if they removed it from here to add a new feature or something to the quick access toolbar, you can always go find it somewhere else. You just have to consider which of the drop-down menus is the one that's going to give you the best help. So all I got to do now is just click a bunch of cells covering all of that, go to format, go down to clear formatting, and boom, it brings it back to its original letter values without any formatting whatsoever. All right, so let's talk about moving things around. So I have tomatoes in cell B4. You can see as I move to the left and to the right on the blue lines around this, that I get this like little catcher's mitt kind of a thing, like a cartoon hand. And anytime I get that, I can left click and drag, and you see this little blue outline of where it's going to end up. I can put it anywhere I want. So you can grab and move the contents of any cell. Just know that there's no formula behind this because there's just the letter values. We don't see a formula written up there. But if there was, you could also move data with a formula behind it, and it would still have the formula no matter where you put it. All right, that's pretty cool. I want to put that back there for right now. All right, know this too, that if you put it on top of something, it will erase it because all that's there now is tomatoes, those letter values. And if I now move this back, you'll see that there's nothing there because I erased it by moving this on top of it. So that can happen. So keep that in mind. All right. So now we've done some formatting with that. We've moved things around. What else can we do? We could right click on this and we could copy it. And now it's part of our clipboard. And so I can right click anywhere else and I could paste it. And because it's on our clipboard, I could right click anywhere and paste it wherever I want to. And I can keep doing that as many times as I want to and paste it wherever I want. I'm going to undo all of those. So that's easy enough. If I want to remove it from here and I want to copy it and then paste it somewhere else, but I don't want this to remain behind, of course, cut will do that. It will actually remove it but it will still be on the clipboard, and so you can paste it anywhere else. That's what cut is for. And of course, there's the keyboard shortcut, which we will use when we have our hands on the keyboard. All right, so let's look at this data here. Let's look at column F. We saw hashtags in the Excel one, but for some reason now we have numbers. All right, that's pretty cool. But I wonder, it's kind of squished up there. Maybe we can move this. So how do we format rows and columns? Well, if we want to make a row bigger, we can always go up to a row. And if we get right between the 5 and the 6, you'll see an up-down arrow. And we can grab, and we can make row 5 as big as we want just by grabbing it. And we can put it back a little bit, make it a little bit bigger if we want. We can do all of those things. I'm going to undo that until it gets back to where it was. All right, so this is kind of squished. So maybe I want to like open this up just a little bit so we could see the whole number. So I just move. Oh, wow, looks like there's some more numbers under there. Okay. Oh, well, looks like there's some more. Okay. Well, holy cow. This is only 4 rows of numbers, but imagine if you have a worksheet with 500 students or 3,000 students at a high school, or maybe you work in a department where you're dealing with the entire school district or all of elementary or something. You might have tens of thousands of data entry points, data sets all the way down, in this case, column F. If you want to widen a column to the widest data set, whatever the longest number of this is, you just get between it, hold it steady, and double click, and now it widens it to the largest data set. And so even if we had 500 or 5,000 data sets all the way down in 5,000 rows, by doing this, it will widen it to the largest data set, so it will accommodate all of it. So keep that in mind. That's a pretty cool feature. Just another thing to point out that in column B, we have these things. There's nothing in column C just to the right, which is why tomatoes is allowed to spill over. If I just click in C4 and I just put a couple numbers, then tomato gets truncated, it's cut off. It's all still there. We can see the letter values are there. It just doesn't, it's not allowed to pour over because it will be blocking our view of this number string that's there. So that's important, because graham crackers is not both in H and I, it's simply in H, and then I is over here. And if we added something, then it would kind of block it just like it did over here. I'm going to go ahead and undo that so that it can flow out. All right, let's talk about some other things. So then I'm going to click on number 5. So we talked about moving things just by grabbing one of the 4 blue sides. That's pretty cool. But what's this dot right here? Now I know that I've turned my mouse cursor yellow, so it's easier for you all to see it and follow along. But I'm going to tell you that if you don't have a modified mouse cursor, that is a black plus sign as opposed to yellow. And so I call it the black magic plus sign. Why is that? Because this is a copy tool. And it's a very powerful copy tool, as we'll see in the next 10 or 15 minutes as we use it with formulas. But for right now, what's in the cell E10? We know it's E10 because it's column E and row 10, and it says up in the name box that it's E10. All it is a 5. You can see it right up here. It's the numeral 5. But if I drag it over here, it will copy the contents of whatever's in here, including formulas, over to these cells. Sure enough, there's a 5. There's a 5. I'm going to undo that. What happens if I go over the top of cheesecake? Well, you probably already guessed. It's going to eliminate cheesecake altogether and just put a 5 there because we copied the contents of E10 and we placed it in H10. Well, I kind of like cheesecake, so I'm going to go ahead and undo that. That's cool. But the same thing down here, we've got all of these numbers. So I'm just going to drag down here and I'm going to change all these numbers to 5. And the reason I'm doing that is because I am going to start talking about formulas and functions, and I'm going to use this as our first example. So before we move on, just remember that we're on our first worksheet. In fact, it's called Sheet 1. In fact, each of these has its own name. This one's last name, comma, space, first name. This one's called full names. We can see this has a purple line under it because that's how Google Sheets does it. This one has a green one. Here's the short version of our pretend school district. Here's the longer one with 473 students. It's got the yellow underneath and bar charts to be and so on. And so that's great. The default name for this one is Sheet 1. So if I want to change the color of this, or if I want to change the name of it, I can first look up here in my quick access toolbar, but I don't see anything that's going to do that. So then I have to go figure out, where can I do that? Is it going to be in view? Is it going to be in insert, format, data? Sometimes you will be looking around for quite a while. So remember what I suggest, that you can right click on things, you can left click on things, you can double click, and you can triple click. And depending on where you do that, different things will happen. But before we do any of that, we see that there's a little more button here, this little arrow. Just like when we see an ellipsis, kind of like right here, it just means there's more because that says default, but we don't see all of it because there's an ellipsis there. So it's kind of like a more button. If I hit that, oh, okay, we get a shortcut menu. I can delete sheet one. I can duplicate it and make a copy of sheet one, or I can make a copy of it and send it to an entirely new spreadsheet or an existing one somewhere in our drive. I could rename it. Okay, so if I want to change the name to something cool like those other worksheets down below there to the right, then I could do that right there. Oh, look, here's where I can change the color. Just like last name, comma, space, first name is green and full names is purple. That's where you do it. I could protect it, I could hide it, I could move it to the right, I could move it to the left. So that's how we organize and move things around. Okay, so how did I do that again? I just simply clicked on the more button. All right, well, look at this. You don't have to like get right on top of that to do it. You just go down here and you right click. It's the exact same shortcut menu. All right, well, that's kind of cool. And then I'd have to go up here and say rename it. Oh, wait, Mr. J said, try sometimes double clicking on things. Oh, look at that. Very quickly, boom, we can change it to whatever we want. So I'm going to change it to Fred, because Fred Flintstone's one of my favorite cartoons from the 60s and 70s. And so I got to name it whatever I want. And so I'm going to just click away, and I've now set it. And you know what? Fred rhymes with red. So I'm just going to right click, and I'm going to say change color, make it red. Just that quickly, we now have made this, look a little bit different, and we've customized it to meet our needs. We look over here and we see something. What the heck is that? All sheets. Oh, okay. There's Fred, which is red. Last name, comma, space first, all of them. So we can navigate with this. Bar chart to be. Oh yeah, we saw that earlier. We're going to see it again. We want to go back to Fred. We could do it just like that. What if we want a new worksheet just to the right here? We just have a plus sign. And guess what the first name is going to be of the very first sheet one by default. And if we did it again, then of course we'd have a sheet two. And if we want to get rid of this, right click, and we could just say, okay, delete. There it is. Are you sure? Yep, I'm sure. Same with this one, right click, delete, just that quickly. All right, so remember, those are some ways that you can move around and do different things, and that's great. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit here so that we can see the contents of E10 through E14. This is a bunch of fives, all right? In fact, I'm gonna go up a little bit further. If I want to put a formula down here to add up all of these, I could do that. If I want to put the formula over here, I can, to add up all of these. Because a formula, it turns out, put down here in cell 20, a formula, it turns out, can be done in any cell on any worksheet, and it can refer to any cell on any worksheet. It's called a data set. And so let's just talk about some basics of formulas. So I'm just going to put it over here arbitrarily. And every formula, almost every formula, 99% of them, starts off with an equal sign. And I know that's really tiny to see, but it starts off with an equal sign. And then it usually has that action word. So think about the action word in a sentence is a verb. The boy and girl are swimming across the lake. Swimming is your action word. That's what gives you the visual in your head. That's a verb. All right. So just like a verb is an action word in a sentence, a function is an action word in a formula. And that formulaic expression or sentence gets written out up here on the formula bar. And so there's a bunch of them that are out there. And we're going to see a couple. I'm going to type in my favorite one real quick that we'll see in a little bit. Proper, that's a function. And what does it do in this particular formula? What action does it do? It capitalizes each word in a specific string. The reason that's my favorite one, and we are going to use it later with those names, is because it says what it does and it makes sense first time. It's not like some crazy programming language that it's hard to figure out or whatever. So that's an example of an action word called a function. And so this formula has an equal sign, and then proper, and then I'm just going to put an open and close parentheses. And then the last part of a formula is the data set that this function is going to be applied to. Okay. And so that's how that works. And so we saw that on this other one that we're going to do in H2, we were going to do the proper function in a formula that was going to change these lowercase names into proper case, or stated differently, make the first letter in each one capitalized. All right. So I'm going to go back to where we were. So that's an example of a formula. Okay. So what kind of help do we have from Google Sheets if we want to start a formula? Well, we can go up here, we can kind of look around, and maybe we'll find where it says formula somewhere. Oh, name functions. Okay, we can go there. That's one idea. Let's see if we can click on this. Nope, not like Excel. Someday I'm going to click on that and it's going to open up all those functions. So now it's saying that we have to go back, and now I forget where it was, data, and go get the name functions that way. But then we forgot to look at our quick access toolbar because that's usually faster. And we might recognize the sigma symbol, and that of course is going to take us to our functions. So I click on it. And the first thing we're going to notice is that it gives us, kind of like our quick access toolbar, it gives us the 5 most common action words, if you will, functions that we usually need for something. And sure enough, the first one, sum, if I hover over it, is it going to give me a preview and tell me what it does? It should. It's not. My computer's working slow today. I apologize. All right, well, let's just go down and look at all of the different ones that we have. So we have these different categories: all, array, database, and each one has its own action words, its own functions that work in these formulaic expressions, these sentences that we call formulas. And so if we want to know what something does, all we have to do is just hover over it. Okay, hex2 bin, which is part of engineering, which none of us are engineers, I don't think. It says converts a hexadecimal number to binary. Okay, thank you for explaining that, Google, although I don't feel like I understand it any better. Here's what the first thing we need to know is you don't have to understand functions, exactly how they're working. If someone says this is the action word that you want to use in your formula to do X, Y, or Z, because that's what you're doing in your department or at your school site or whatever, yeah, it'll work. We don't have to understand it. We don't have to, understand all of these crazy, how about this one? Converts a binary number to a hexadecimal. Okay, whatever that means. That's in engineering. A lot of us aren't dealing with that. Let's see what some of the other ones are. So all, of course, is going to have all of them alphabetic order. And let's try that again. I can go ahead and grab this and we just go through them all. But we don't know which categories these all fit to. So it's kind of better to just kind of go down and see array, database, data, engineering. Well, let's find some that are going to make sense with what we're doing at our school sites and in the district. Math, okay. So there we go. So how about this one? Inverse cosine of a value in radians. Well, I don't know about you, but it's been a long time since I've had my last math class at college, and I couldn't tell you anything about what that means, not with any real accuracy. So again, we don't have to know exactly what all the stuff is if we know that it's the right one to work. So in math, we might imagine we could scroll down and we could get to the S's, and there we might find the one that says sum of a series of numbers into cells. And sure enough, we want to add up all those fives in column E, and we want to sum them, add them together. Okay, so that's the one we're going to use. But let's just poke around a little bit more. So we got parser, operator, statistical, text. Okay, that's interesting. Well, oh, look, there's my favorite one. Why? Because you read it and you easily understand that the proper function capitalizes each word in a specific string. So if I've got 2 words like chocolate cake, which are 2 letter strings, and I employ the proper function, both words are going to be capitalized because of this function. That's easy to understand. Let's look at len, length of a string. Okay, sort of kind of have an idea what that means. How about find? First position of a string found in text, case sensitive. Oh boy. All right, how about this one? Concatenate, that's an English word. Append strings to one another. We've talked about letter strings, we talked about number strings. We are actually going to use the concatenate function because it's going to allow us to take Gable and Clark and put it into another column, into a cell, and make it Gable, comma, space Clark by using the function concatenate. So here's the problem with all things Google, in this case, Google Sheets, is that we don't get a lot of help. We have some idea. We could go on the internet to the Google websites and get more support and find out great details about concatenate and all that. But when we're dealing with 10,000 different ones that we can, use, that's a lot of searching and all of that, which is why I said at the beginning of this course, we are going to use our Excel spreadsheet to manipulate some data using artificial intelligence, a machine learning tool called FlashFill, which uses no formulas and no functions. So keep that in mind. So if right now you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in over my head, Mr. J is talking about formulas and functions, it's getting really crazy. Well, just remember, you don't have to remember any of this because you can do it in Excel and then just turn that Excel spreadsheet into a Google Sheets spreadsheet, because that's what we did with this one right here, right? So we could import that data already fixed and done. So here we want the sum one. If I know the formula, I can put the equal sign and then sum and then put the open and close quotations, or not quotations, but parentheses. But we're going to go back here because it's right there at the top, sum. And I'm going to click on it. And now we see a little bit of help. So it says sum value 1, comma, value 2, comma, dot, dot, dot. That's inside of the parentheses. We see the equal sign. We see it up here as well. We see the equal sign. We see the action word to add up, in this case, a bunch of fives. And which fives are we going to be adding up? Well, that's where we have to indicate which ones we want to do. We might figure that out by reading this. But look, there's a more button here, expand the details. Okay, well, we need to make this a little bit bigger in our zoom window. All right, maybe I can scroll up with this. Oh, I can't right now. But anyway, we get a little bit more information there that tells us about how this works, and it gives us a little sample and all of that. That's great. Just know that when you're going to put in the data range, with learning just a couple of quick tricks that we're going to learn right now, you can do it pretty easily. We basically want to add up right here in E20 using the sum function. We want to add up all of the data between E10 and E14. And it's as simple as left clicking and dragging. And as I drag down, you'll see on the formula bar, it's changing. It's saying E10 colon E14, E15, E16. As I go up and down, if I go back to here, now it's going to say E10 through E11. So here's the first thing you need to know, and I'm just going to go to here because that's the one we want. The colon basically means through, or E10 all the way to E14. And we can see there's an orange box on it. We haven't set this yet. We've just sort of started. We have to hit enter. And look, it's already given us a sample of what it will be, 25. Sure enough, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Okay, so right down here in E20, where it looks like actually we moved to E19. Oh, no, it is in E20, but it's showing in E19. Remember that. It says E20 right there. That's a little tricky. It's right above where we're working. But again, we're just doing the sample right now. All right, so that's what that means. So let's go ahead and hit enter and see what happens. All right. So there's E20. We've got a 25. Remember I said that you click on something, you look up here to see if there's a formula behind it. This just looks like a 25, but if we click on it, there's our formula. Okay. And it's saying E10 through E14. How does it say that? It's got the colon between it. All right. What happens, and I'm going to click in there so we can start changing this. What happens if I remove that colon and I change it to another symbol called a comma? And that's going to mean something entirely different. So I'm going to get this out of the way. So E10 and E14. Remember with the colon, it's E10 through E14, but with a comma, now that comma is like saying and or like a plus. So it's E10 and E14. So there's one square, there's another one. And so we know what that adds up to. So I'm going to hit enter. Oh, come on. I'll just click over here to set it. All right. And so it's 10. Why is it 10? Because it's just E10 and E14. So, all right, that's kind of cool. Let me put a 5 in here and hit enter and see if that 10 changes. Oh, it didn't. Another 5 and enter. Well, why didn't it? Well, let's go back and look at the formula. It's just E10 and E14. Okay. But did you know that I can come in here, E10 and E14? I'm going to do the colon. Remember, that's the through. And where's the last 5 here? It's E16. So I can just type, it's not case sensitive. I'm just going to type in E16. So now what is it saying? It's basically saying, let's get that back up there. It's saying E10, that's the orange part, and there's the comma, and E14 through E16. And we know what that's going to be. That's going to be the number 20. In fact, there's our sample right up there saying, hey, that's what it's going to be. So that's kind of some very basics about formulas. And unfortunately, if you don't know at least that much, Google Sheets isn't going to help you very much. You're going to be poking around a lot, but with just a little bit of knowledge and understanding, then we can start to make, formulas and functions work for us a little bit better. So all I have to do now is just click somewhere else to set it. And sure enough, it's 20. Why? Because it's E10 through E14. I'm sorry, E10 and E14 through E16. And we can go back and modify this as many times as we want to. But for all intents and purposes, we've seen an example of a very basic formula. And remember, where's the formula? Behind the 20. Happens to be an E20. Let's move it. Oh, look, it still works. Why? Because it's pointing to E10 and E14 through E16. All right. That's interesting. Let's go make another change. And I'm going to go back and get rid of that comma. So now it's E10 through E16. And that's going to be 35. I'm going to hit enter here. And so I'm going to set it. So now we can see we changed it E10 through E16. There it is. It has all of them. If I want to add more space here, what I could do is instead of E16, I could make it E200 or 2000. Will that work? But we only have data in the first few. Well, why would we do that? So that we can add more numbers. 5, enter. Now it's 40. 5, enter. Now it's 45. 5, enter. And so on and so forth, all the way down to 200. And if we get to row 201 and we need more room, what do? We simply click on the formula and we change the data range, the data set that is inside the parentheses. So equal sign, action word, open close parentheses with our data range. And we've just learned a couple ways to do that. All right, I'm going to move this back down here just to put it on 22. Uh-oh, didn't work. Error. Circular dependency detected. To resolve with iterative calculation, see file greater than settings. Okay, long and short of it is, do you remember that the formula is referring to all the way to row 200? Can't put it there. I could put it anywhere else. I could put it down in row 201. But remember, the formula, you can't put the answer to the formula inside the data range because it won't work. So we got to see that error. Pretty cool. All right, let's kick it up a notch. Here we go. Last name, comma, space first. And I'm going to do another trick here. I'm going to hold down the control wheel and I'm going to roll my mouse wheel one direction. I'm going to make things a little bit bigger. I've already got this at 150. And then I'm going to move things over a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. So right here in G1, I want to do a formula that's going to essentially make it Gable, comma, space, and Clark. All right. So we can see the letter string we want is in F1 and the second letter string is in E1. So let's see if we can build this. So again, if we know the formula, I can put the equal sign. I can write out concatenate if we could remember that. And then I could put the open close parentheses, but I have to know a few more tricks because remember, the comma is when you have two data sets added together, this data set and that data set, but we want it to actually come out in the final product with a comma and a space. So we're going to have to learn how to do that. Okay, so in G1, we want to use the formula that's going to allow us to make the name Clark and Gable into the last name, comma, space, first name format. And so we remember that we can go down to our text functions. And then we remember that we can go to this one that says concatenate. And we can go ahead and click on concatenate and it starts it. Most all formulas, 99% of them start with an equal sign, then our action word, in this case, the function concatenate. and then it's our data set. And so we have the cursor in the proper place. So we want Gable to be the very first thing. We want the last name. We want Gable. So I can either type in F1 right here, or I can just click on it and it will put it in there. There we go. Now it's working properly. And look, it's giving us a sample. Gable. Okay. F1. We've got the little orange box there. Okay. So now we have F1. Well, we now want to add a comma and a space on the end of this. So it says Gable, comma, space, Clark, or stated differently, last name, comma, space, first name. And so we're going to go ahead and put a comma in here and see what happens. All right. Well, we don't see a comma here. Why is that? Because remember, like in our number fives, that's the same as saying F1 and something else. So how is it that we put a comma in there if the comma is part of the formula in this formulaic expression? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Once you learn how to do it, you probably won't forget. All you have to do is put the comma in the space inside of quotation marks. Yeah, the same ones you use when you do a quote. So I'm going to hold down the shift key, hit the quotation mark, and then I'm going to put a comma. And now we see it just showed up right here in our sample. Our comma just showed up. But then I need a space. Remember that, because it's last name, comma, and a space, then first name. And then I just close it off with a quotation mark. All right, there it is. So now we have Gable, comma, space. And so all we need over here now is E1. And we could click on that. But I'm going to go ahead and just put the, because we're just kind of writing this out, I'm going to put the end, because now we're going to add it to it. And so we want to put in E1. And just to show that it's not case sensitive, I'm just going to do E and a 1. And there you go. That is our completed formula. And all we had to do special or different than what we saw when we were summing up the fives is we wanted a comma and a space. And to make it happen, we had to enclose it or encapsulate it in the quotation marks. Why? Because a comma is part of the formulaic expression, and it simply means F1 and a comma and a space and E1. That's what those commas are. And sure enough, it says Gable, comma, space, Clark. We're good. So all I have to do is hit enter at this point. All right, there we go. All right, let's take a look real quick. There it is. It's referring to F1, and then it's adding a comma and a space, and then it's referring to E1 that's over here. That's great. So can I move this formula now anywhere and it will still point to F1 and E1? You bet. We could do that. I'm not going to waste the time doing it, but here's our copy tool. We already have the formula here. What happens if I take my copy tool and drag it down? Whoa. Let's see what happened real quick. Remember, the formula is pointing directly to the left, to the data, to the letter string in F1 and E1 with our little comma and a space in it. Let's see what it did. It copied the exact same formula, but it said, hey, we're looking just to the left, so now it's probably F2 and E2, sure enough. And then we changed it to F3 and E3, and then Lana Turner, of course, is F4 and E4. Okay, so that's a pretty handy copy tool. But wait, there's more. Let's go ahead and undo that. I called it a black magic plus sign because it is very powerful. Now, we only have 11 cool names here. We got these old-timey actors at the top. I have some of my favorites guitarists here down at the bottom. Favorite of all time because I'm a guitarist. And that's so easy. I could left click and I could drag it down to Jimi Hendrix and boom, it's going to copy the formula. Of course, Hendrix would be F11 and E11. Stevie Ray Vaughan would be F10 and E10. That's fine. But what if this is a school with 3,000 students or we're in a department that has 10,000 employees? The last thing we want to do is be dragging down, holding and trying to get way down there somewhere. So the black magic plus sign recognizes the formula is pointing to the left. It also recognizes that we have these letter strings all the way down to here, but then they stop, they end, I should say, in 11. So if you got to hold it real steady, get your black magic plus sign. Again, mine is yellow, I realize, but on yours, if you don't have a modified mouse cursor, then yours will be black. So you just get the black magic plus sign and you double left click all the way down. And so what it did was it just copied this formula all the way down as far as there was data to the left of it. And so it just went all the way to 11. And sure enough, there's Hendricks, F11E11, Roy Clark, F7E7, Lauren Bacall, F6E6, so on and so forth. Well, cool. All right. So, well, we took care of that. We used the concatenate function. And just a note, here we are in Sheets. It's called concatenate. All the way to Excel 2013, it's also, the function is called concatenate. For some reason, probably because it's a long word, in Excel 2016, Microsoft Excel 2016 and newer, so 2019, 2021, or 2022 rather, they changed it from concatenate to just concat, just 6 letters. But it does the exact same thing. It's the same function. It just has a different name. I've never actually tried to put in the whole name in a newer one. I'll try that sometime and see if it works. But just know that there's that difference. So over here, we want to use the proper function to fix these names because poor Carrie's got the lowercase, Lauren Bacall's got both lowercase, and they should be proper names. And so I'm just going to drag this over just to make a little bit more room. And right here, we want a formula. And if I need to, I can go and find, oh yeah, it's in the text. Yeah, oh yeah, it's proper. And I can go find that and I can, hover over it and it says, oh yeah, capitalize each word in a specified string. That's great. But we've learned a little bit about formulas now. We know where we want it. We want it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just put the equal sign. In case you don't know where the equal sign is, it's right up there by your backspace button to the right of your QWERTY keyboard. All right. And then we're going to type in proper. And it's not case sensitive, so proper starts with a P. Oh, look, it's giving us some suggestions. I don't even see proper down there. Let's get to the R. Oh, there it is. It's right down here. If I want, I could click on this because it just gave it up as an option. But we're going to do this longhand. We're just going to type it out. Proper. Okay, so now we have our action word, our function, and our formulaic expression. And now we need a data set. Okay, so remember to do a data set, we just do the open and close parentheses. All right, and where is this formula going to point? Oh, just right next door, G1, no problem. So I'm just going to click back inside that data set. And again, demonstrating it's not case sensitive, I'm just going to type in G1. Hey, look at that. Hey, Mr. J, this is a sample. It's going to be Gable, Clark, and everything's going to be capitalized. Great. Thank you. That's what we want. So now I'm just going to hit enter. And there it is. There's our formula. Again, we can drag and copy this all the way down, or just use the black magic plus sign, double click, and it goes all the way down to the bottom. Perfect. Now we have all of the names capitalized. Everything's great. Fantastic. We're good to go. Oh, we have way too much stuff on our spreadsheet here. So let's get rid of stuff. Well, we don't need this lowercase Gable and Clark. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit delete. Uh-oh, what happened? Remember, there's a formula in H1. There it is. There's no data there. Why? Because the formula points to G1 and I just erased it. So I can't erase G1. Undo, bam. Okay, well, fine. Then I'll go over here and I don't like this little Gable here. So I'm going to delete that. Uh-oh, now we got a problem. Oh yeah, H1 points to G1 and I just got rid of Gable. G1 points to both F1 and E1, so Gable's missing. That's a problem. I have to bring it back. Okay, so what the heck to do? We can't erase this stuff because we got formulas behind this data here, and it's dependent on these other cells here as part of the data range. Well, there's a trick. You can copy any column you want, and you can paste it in any other column, even on top of other columns if you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this column. We're going to right click and we're going to copy it. And we're going to paste it right back on top of H. But when we do it, we don't want to paste back the formula. That was our problem to begin with. We want to paste special. And what kind of a special paste are we going to do? Remember, we've been talking about letter strings and letter values. We just want the values. We don't want the formula. We just want the values. So that's what we want. Paste special, values only. Boom. So now when I click on Gable, Clark, it's just the name. Jimi Hendrix. Yep, just the name. So if I want to, I can go to G1 and I can hit delete. It's not going to fix this because there's no formula any longer pointing to G1. All right, let's move on to our next example. So years ago, someone in our training class said, "That's great, Mr. J, but we have a different problem. We have a column with the first and last names and even middle names, and we want to separate the full names out to two new columns. One column will be last names and the other one will be first names. What's the formula for that?" Well, first of all, I'll tell you that the example I'm about to give is about the most complex example you can give. Will it work? Absolutely. If you don't have any extra spaces or miss a certain symbol or something in our formulaic expression, it will work. Is it the best way to do this? Certainly not. There's much shorter ways to do it. But what we're going to demonstrate now is something called a nested function, just to show you how complex formulas can get. So we want to do the formula here in B2. And so I've kind of done a little trick. Down here in B20 is the formula. There it is. And you can see that len and find, we kind of poked around at that earlier when we were looking at the text. We can see that there are functions inside of a function. So these are called nested functions. So let's use our trick, because remember, we can grab a formula, data from a cell with a formula behind it, and we can move it anywhere we want. So now we can see it. So we don't have to understand what every aspect of this is doing, but we can very quickly appreciate a few things. We see A2, A2, A2. Oh yeah, Clark Gable's right there in A2. Boom. So right here, the last name is pulling out of A2. Okay. And then we see this function that says right. Okay, so Gable is the letter string on the right. Again, it doesn't know it's an old-timey actor or that it's the last name or that my grandmother was in fact in love with Clark Gable. Doesn't matter. It just knows that it's the letter string on the right, and that's what that function is doing. And so it worked, and it's pointing to A2. Okay, so you might be thinking like me. I was thinking, you know what? I'll bet you, since the first name's on the left, all I have to do is change the function to the left and it's going to work just swimmingly. It doesn't work. We'll show you in just a second. But first, real quick, black magic plus sign, double click all the way down. And so it's simply changed it from A2 to A12. We got Roy Clark over here, or Clark's last name. That's A8, and so on and so forth. So what's the formula going to be over here? Well, again, I simply put it down here at the bottom. Sure enough, it says left. Sure enough, it says A2. Let's bring it up so we can see what it's pointing to. All right. So it's pointing to the left, which is Clark. All right. And it's still pointing to A2. But the word lend isn't there. And the other one had a find with a minus sign in front of it. In fact, if we go back and forth, we can see the last name one is different than the first name one. And again, we don't have to understand exactly how all this stuff works. If we find a formula, when we Google it, we're trying to figure out a formula and it says, hey, you could use this formula. Just remember that you have to make sure it's pointing to the correct data set. In this case, A2, right? And so we'll use our black magic plus sign and we'll copy that all the way down. And again, these data sets that we're looking at are created from a formula that's drawing from a cell, two cells over, two columns over. So if we want to put the result somewhere else, we can, but it still has to point to the data set that we're going to have as part of the formulaic expression. Okay, so now we have seen how to add up fives and doing summing. We did the last name comma space first, and we did the concatenate, and we did the proper function to fix that, and then we copy and paste special. We did full names just to show how complex some of the formulas can be. So now here's the good news. You don't have to learn how to do formulas or functions at all. Why? Because we've already seen that we can take an Excel spreadsheet and turn it into a Google sheet. So if Excel, because Google Sheets doesn't have the AI yet doing what Excel can do since 2013 going forward until now, it can't do that. It doesn't have that AI tool, that machine learning called flash fill. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Excel workbook that I have, and I'm just going to go real quick to my flash fill 1, 2, and 3. All right. This should look familiar to you. All right, I'm going to move that over a little bit. Okay, so here is where we use the concatenate formula to make it Gable, comma, space, last name. And then here you might recall that we ended up using the proper function and formula to then make all of the names proper case. We're going to do all of that without formulas and functions using artificial intelligence. And it couldn't be easier. There is a caveat. It's watching the patterns that you're doing. So it's looking to see if you're putting a letter string down, does it match either of the letter strings over here? In other words, if I misspell Gable or Clark and I hit enter, then it's going to go, I have no idea what you're doing. It's not going to recognize that Gable has an extra A in it, for example, because I misspelled it. It's just going to see letter strings that are one letter longer than the ones over here. So you do have to make sure you're spelling it right. And so if you make a mistake and you hit enter and then you realize you've got it misspelled, just undo a couple times and then go back and start over. You can't just erase it and then start putting in new data by pushing delete, because it's trying to follow a pattern and you've confused it completely. But if you undo it and go back before you started showing it a pattern, then it will know what to do. So what's the first last name here? I guess that's a little confusing. The last name, the first one we're going to do is Gable. And yes, I'm going to make it capitalized. Oh, too many E's. Uh-oh, it's okay. I haven't hit enter yet. So now I can backspace and make it spelled right. So again, this letter string is identical to F1, except for I've made it proper case. No problem. Then we want a comma, then we want a space, and then we want Clark. So let's put a Clark on there. All right. And oops, accidentally got too many. No problem. I have not hit the enter or the return key yet, so I can backspace. I make sure that this letter string matches the contents of E1. This letter string matches the contents of F1. Yes, I made it proper case. We can do that. I added a comma and a space. Okay, so now I'm going to hit enter. So what's the next letter in the last name? It's Gardner. And here's where it's watching the pattern. Oh, is that what you want, Mr. J? See the gray part there? Nope, nope, that is not what I want. I was trying to spell Gardner, so the next letter in Gardner is an A. Is that what you want, Mr. J? No, no, that's not it. The third letter is an R, which is different than Gable, which is a B. So as soon as I hit that R, look what it does. Bam! It's all gray right now because I haven't accepted it yet. But I'm going to accept it, and all I have to do is hit enter. So there you have all of the names and last name, comma, space, first name. And more importantly, there's no formula behind any of these, okay? And it did it that fast. We did it with 11 names. It doesn't matter if there's 1,100, 11,000, or 111,000 names. It will do it instantly to all of it because all it's doing is watching the pattern. Okay, letter string from F1. Okay, letter string from E1. We made it proper case and we added a comma. Okay, so Gable's capitalized, Turner's capitalized, Bogart, Bacall capitalized. But wait a minute, Mr. J, what about Carrie? What about Lana? How come those didn't get done? Well, let's go back and find out in our example. Well, Clark, we simply matched the letter string that's in E1. We didn't change the case. And so following the pattern, it also didn't change the case of the rest of these. So Lauren, Lana, and Carrie need to be fixed. No problem. We go back to Carrie, and I put my cursor in there, and I backspace, and I do Shift, letter C. Carrie, there it is. Watch what happens when I hit enter to Lana and Lauren. Okay, there we go. It's done. Flash fill. Done. And no formulas behind it. You don't have to copy and paste. Wow. Can it be that easy? Yes, it can. And you can manipulate data in incredible ways. Let's go to the next one. Remember those nested functions? Forget about it. Gable, there it is. Enter. Gardner, capital G. Is that what you want, Mr. J? No. A. Is that what you want, Mr. J? R. Boom. Is that what you want, Mr. J? Again, whether it's 11 or 11,000 or 11 million, it doesn't matter. You just hit enter and it's going to automatically do it. It can't be that easy, can it? Sure it can. First names, Clark. Clark. I hit enter. What's the next name? It starts with an A. Boom. Is that what you want, Mr. J? Yes, sir. Boom. So now we have just manipulated the data out of column A into two new columns by simply showing patterns to the artificial intelligence that is watching us work, and it's called flash fill. And that's pretty cool. So, gee, I wonder what we could do with flash fill. Well, let's find out. So here is a list of 473 students. I believe Sarah Zuniga is the last one. I'm going to do Control End to get down to the bottom. Sure enough, Sarah Zuniga is the last one. This is a really long list. Let's go back up to the top, Control Home. And we see that the street address is broken up by the street name and number, the city, the state, the zip. And then we have like a contact person over here or whatever. This is the data sheet that we use in the advanced Microsoft Word class when we do mail merge. So if we're writing a letter home or an email or something to all of the different students, and maybe in that letter, it's going to have the contact person. Well, we access this data sheet here and set it up in mail merge. And that way we only write one letter, and then all of the students will get their individualized names with their contact person because it's set up in this spreadsheet. That's what this is for. But we're going to use it for something different. So all I want to see is column C, D, E, and F. That's the four parts of the address we're going to do. We're going to put it right here in H2. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so there's room. All right. And we don't really want Mary Doe. What we're going to do is we're going to write this out in the proper grammatical form for sentence. So in other words, it's going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, First Street, comma, then a space, San Diego, space, CA, space, 92001. And it's all going to be out like in one sentence here. So let's get at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, First Street. And remember, if I misspell something, it's okay. As long as I don't hit enter, I don't have to go back and start over. So that looks good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, First Street. That's a letter string. I'm sorry, 2 letter strings and 1 number string. And it came from where? C2. So that's the pattern it's looking at. We now add a comma and a space. And then we need San Diego. Do. All right. And then another space and then a CA. Then another space, and then we need 92001. Uh-oh, I made a mistake. So in F2, it's 92001, and I put 92001. Okay, no problem. I haven't hit enter yet, so I can go ahead and fix that. 92001. All right. And so this number string matches F2, CA matches E2, and then San Diego D2, and then the street address C2. All right. And just to show you that this is a pattern thing, let's go ahead and add about, I don't know, 8 or 10 extra spaces there. Cool. Because you can do this. You can just show patterns. So I'm going to hit enter. And now the very next number of the street address in C3 is the number 8. And remember, there's 473 students. So 1, 2, 3, hit the 8. Boom. Is that what you want, Mr. J? Uh-huh. Enter. That quick. Now check this out. It followed the pattern by adding the extra 8 or 10 spacebar hits that I did. And it basically added the contents of column C, D, E, and F, added a comma at the end of the street address, and gave all the proper spaces everywhere. Of course, we exaggerated the space between the zip code and the state just to make a point, but it did it all the way down 470 something rows or whatever, all of the students instantly. So that is a very keen, and it skipped right over column G, right? That's a very keen example of what you can do with flash fill. You can manipulate data. So never again are you working with someone and they're like, oh, if we could just get this data like spread out into 2 other columns, or take those 2 columns and put it into a single column, don't worry about the formulas and functions. Just copy and paste that data set into an Excel spreadsheet, 2013 or newer, show it what to do, it'll fix it for you, then copy and paste that data the way that you like it finished back into your Google Sheet, or just take that Excel sheet and then turn it into a Google Sheet. That's the other way to do it. So that is a wonderful example of flash fill, 3 different examples of flash fill. So let's get out of here, and we're going to go back to our Sheets version. And so we're just going to go to this next tab here called Short Version. And we can see that we just have, 12 rows of data of our pretend students. And it looks like we have the student number here, and that looks like last name and first name, although we can see that we don't have enough room to see the headers. And in some cases, we don't have enough room to see both the headers and the data sets that are inside. So what can we do? Well, we can always go between D and E and just drag it over until we see it. Oh, wait, but we learned before that all you have to do is go between them and double click, and it will automatically widen it to make the column as wide as the largest data set. In this case, it's the header. All right, that's pretty cool. But then we'd have to do that for each one. Is there a faster way? You bet. So I'm going to undo that change so it goes back to where it was squished. And instead of just doing it between any one column, I'm going to go up here between A and 1, right to here, click on it. Now the entire worksheet is selected, which is great because anything I do between any of these columns, it's going to do it to all of it. So I'm just going to go here, double click, boom. Just going to click over here to deselect or unselect everything. And sure enough, now we can see the header for last name, first name, grade level, birthday, gender, entry code. And here we see description. So let's move this over just a little bit. Oh, and we see the last school name. And here's a mouthful for you. Linda Vista Elementary State Preschool. All right, that's the largest data set. Of course, this is only 12 rows or whatever, but if we had 12,000 rows and you wanted to expand it to get whatever the widest is, even if we don't see it in front of us, it would expand it that wide. And if we saw a bunch of white space here, we would know that somewhere down below, there would be something that's really wide. All right, that's pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead and go now to enrollment by date. Oh, we have the same problem on this one, don't we? Okay, so we just simply go over here, and I'll go to this one this time, double click. All right, now it's done. So now we can see student number, last name, whatever. And remember, this one has 300 or 473 students, something like that, a lot of students. So I could scroll down and do all this stuff and go see all the different kiddos that are there. Let's see, Benedicto, is that a first name or a last name? Oh, yeah, can't see the header up there. That's interesting. So let's fix that. Let's go back up there. We want to fix that first row. So while it's visible, then we have to go up here and see, well, is there a freeze the first row somewhere icon here? I don't see it. So then we have to start looking in all of these. And with a little bit of practice, we'll remember that it's right there in view where it says freeze. And we have some options. And so we just say freeze one row. Boom. So now when we scroll down, we don't have to guess whether it's a first name or last name or what these RTs are and this E15, that's an entry code. And so it'll just kind of follow us around. It also allows us to do some other stuff. So for example, we have the last names are not in alphabetical order because the first one starts with an A, then the next last name is an M, then it goes back to a couple of A's and then an L, then back to some A's. Clearly that's not in, has not been sorted in alphabetical order. So now we have to figure out where we can do that at. How do we get to that? We see a more button here, so we could push that. And oh, look, there's one way to do it right down there. Sort sheet A to Z. That's one way, just for fun. Let's see if we can see another way to do it. That looks like a filter icon, create a filter. Okay, well, all I did was put this here. And oh, look, so now we can do some filtering, but we can also do some sorting there as well. And then we have this button here, which is the same as just right-clicking on this that we did before. And sure enough, it's down there. We'll just do this one. Boom. So now it's all in alphabetical order. I'm going to undo that real quick. And we're going to talk about something important. So Miss Acosta's first name is Sabah. Sabah Acosta's student number is 37854. That's different than Danny Morales's student number. And we see the birth date of Sabah and the grade level, gender, all of that to the right. So we have data to the right and data to the left. And we have to be careful when we are sorting things, like in this case, alphabetical order. We want to make sure that we don't put this column B in alphabetical order and then these numbers stay the same. That would be terrible because now all the wrong numbers and then all the wrong first names and all of that. But something cool that Google Sheets does is it automatically expands the selection for you. If you try this trick in Excel, you'll always get expand the selection warning. And it will say, hey, you have data to the left and right. Do you want to expand the selections? Like, yes. And you have to do it every single time. But because 99 times out of 100, we just want to make sure the data to the left and right stays, with this case, the name Acosta, it automatically does it for you. So now there's Camilla Acosta, and we can see the numbers are different and the first names are different than what we saw before. So there's an example of sorting, in this case, alphabetical order. And so if we go over here to E, and let's click on here and see what our options are. It's the same thing as a right click. And so we can, it says remove filter. What filter is on there? That's interesting. How about create a filter? Not sure what filter was on there, but that's okay. So now we can just click here and we can say, okay, so we have blanks. Why do we have blanks? Well, there's only 475 students. And so this spreadsheet goes down to 1,000. So we have blanks all the way to 1,000. We don't want to see the blanks. We don't want, and then let's look at this. We've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0, in case you didn't know, are kindergartners. And ones, that's because ones are first graders, second graders, third, fourth, fifth. So we just want our third and fourth graders to show up in this list. So again, I've selected grade level, and then I've gone to the filter here. And so I'm going to deselect 2, 1, and 0. And all I have selected now are 3 and 4. And I say, okay. And so all I'm going to see now are third and fourth graders here. And I get this little icon that said that there's a filter in play. Not sure why it said before undo filter or whatever, because we didn't have a filter there. The other thing we're going to notice is we have some numbers missing. We have 2 and 3 is missing, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 through 13 missing. Number 15 is missing, 17 is missing, 19 and 20, and so on and so forth. Why is that? Well, those other numbers that are missing aren't grades 4 and 3. And of course, we can always change this and go back and say, well, I just want third graders. Okay. Got to hit OK when we're done. So I only have third selected. And now all we see is third grade. And of course, there's a many more numbers that are missing. In this case, the fourth graders are missing as well. So there's an example of sorting. There's an example of filtering. So the share button is up here at the right. And so this is where we can start adding the email addresses of the people that are going to be either viewers or they're going to be editors. So for example, if I want to add from our group Diana, I can just put in a D, and since I've been working with Diana, she goes right to the front. And so by default, it says, hey, make Diana an editor. But if I need to, I can say, no, Diana's just a viewer or a viewer and a commenter, but we'll leave her as an editor for right now. If I want to, I could type in a message. I don't really want to. And then as soon as I say send, it's going to go to Diana. She'll get a message, however her notifications are set up, but she will have access to this to be able to be an editor on this particular workbook. But before we do that, whenever you see a cogwheel, a little gear, that's settings. And when we click on that, if this first line has a checkbox, and by default it is, it's checked, it says editors can change permissions and share. That means that if I make Diana an editor, then Diana can share this with whomever she wants. She can also remove privileges from whomever she wants. She can also change permissions with whomever she wants. There's a lot that Diana can do. All right. The one thing that she can't do is make herself an owner. So we had a problem like that showed up a while back where someone made themselves an owner. If you are not the owner, you cannot make yourself an owner. So that's how we know that Google messed up. And Google does that. Sometimes the Google server farms, something goes awry and weird things happen, data disappears, or it reassigns names to someone else. But just know that there's no way for you to be able to make yourself an owner. Only the owner can change ownership to someone else. So keep that in mind. And then the next one says, viewers and commenters can see the option to download, print, and copy. If you have a really awesome spreadsheet and you don't want people copying it down, but you want them to view it, then deselect this, and they won't be able to print it or copy it. But we're going to leave those the same for right now, but just know that we found that in settings right up here. And we're just going to go ahead and say send. And it takes a couple of seconds. It says access updated. It already says saved already. We're already done. Let's go back to share real quick. And so now we can see that Diana Peterson is an editor right there. And if you click on this button, we now see that if we want to, we can change her permissions. She's currently an editor. We see the check mark there. We can add an expiration. And look, because I'm the owner, I can transfer ownership. How do I know I'm the owner? It says right here, owner. That's me. All right. So that's all you have to do. If you have a group of people, whether it's 15, 5, 150, if you have their email addresses, you just copy and paste them right in here, and boom, they will all have access. And it will be editor unless you change them individually to some are viewers, some are, editors, however you want to do it. And you can always go back later and change their permissions. I just made Diana a commenter, but notice pending changes, I have to do the save button first. Well, we'll leave her an editor, so that's okay. So, but what else can we do? We can get a link for this. I can send the link in an email to Diane and say, hey, I made you an editor of this particular workbook. And then she clicks on the link, and sure enough, she has editor privileges. Even if someone is a viewer or a viewer and commenter, you send them a link, then they can do that. But this is restricted to only these people here. So what other options do we have? If we're sending this to a whole bunch of people, we don't want to put all their email addresses in. Maybe it's to 500 or 1,000 employees or something. Then now it says anyone with basically a sandy.net email address with the link that you send to them, either you put it on your website and they copy and paste it, or you send it to them in an email, they're a viewer. Or what else can they be? You can make them a commenter. So if you send out that link to 1,000 or 10,000 San Diego Unified employees, and remember, it's the sandy.net Google domain, which includes the sandy.net email addresses of all of the students, anyone that has that link now can be an editor. Holy cow. All right. And if I want them that they can't pass that link on, they have to have the link sent to them or something, maybe I can use this. This is a new feature that just came out. And so if I want to find out more about this, then I can click right there and do that. But just know if there's a check mark, that means that this feature is employed. If I want to remove it, I just click on it and it will disappear. But let's carry on here real quick. So we have restricted where we just have the email addresses put in there, or we switched it from restricted to San Diego Unified, or anyone with a link. There was an issue. Try again. Uh-oh. Weird things happen. Oh, it did work. So now if I push save, let's see if it worked. Now, nope, it went back. So there was a problem with this. Let's try it one more time. Anyone with the link. All right, it worked that time. And anyone with the link is an editor. Okay, that worked. Hit enter. So just know what we did is something very scary. If we put this on a web page, this link, anybody in the world, even outside of sandy.net, are now editors. Not recommended if you want to keep the keep your document, or in this case, a spreadsheet, the same. So that's kind of silly. So here's where we can change things back and just make it restricted if we want, and just the people with the email addresses and so on and so forth. So we have control over that. So there's that. Let's move a couple things around here real quick. The last thing we're going to do is we are going to, and we've done some very thorough investigating here, but we're going to do the bar chart to be just real quick. So here's our bar chart to be, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger again. And again, we have some very simple data that at the beginning of the school year at this particular elementary school, there was 325 males that were returning students and 248 females. But in addition to that, we had 27 new male students and 18 new female that showed up to our school site. So we can make a graphical representation of this data, and we're going to call it a chart. So I just drag from A1 all the way down to C3 so that it's all selected. And then I can go up here to insert, and then I look around for charts, and sure enough, there's a chart, so I can click on that. And it automatically throws it into a bar chart. It's very big and it's hard to see things here. Let's expand our page. Maybe we can see things a little bit better. And we have all these different tools over here that we can use. And just know that you come back in a couple of months, there'll be even more tools. And so Google's adding new features all the time. And I realize we're running long on our class today, so I'm just going to go over this fairly quickly. I see that there's manipulation points on here, so I'm going to grab it, kind of shrink this down a little bit. Then I'm just going to come up here and kind of grab this, see if it'll let me grab it somewhere. There we go. And move it up. In fact, I'm going to get rid of this real quick, and I'm going to move this over so we can see it a little bit. So let's take a look at what we got here. We have a little legend. It says male is blue, female is this orange color. Can we change that? You bet. We can change everything on here and move things around. We could put returning students and new students up here on the left, and then put the numbers down here at the right. We can switch things around in any way that we want to. But for right now, we're just going to take a look at what this is. And maybe I'll do it over on this side so we have a little bit more room. So we have 325 male students. That's what it says right here. And sure enough, we can see between the 300 and 400, about a quarter way up, which is 325. That's where that blue goes to. And then over here, the orange, we have 248 female students. And sure enough, halfway roughly between 200 and 300, we can see that. And then down here, we have smaller numbers, of course, because that's reflecting the male students and the female students that are new. So where can we start working on some different stuff here? If I click over here, then it thinks that we're trying to add something to D1 in this case. But if I click on this, then I can move it around if I want to, but I also have more options, like right here. And so now if I want to edit the chart, delete the chart, download the chart, publish the chart, copy the chart, move to own sheet, whatever, let's go to edit. Aha, now we got back our chart editor that we saw before. And I guess we could move this over just a little bit so it's a little bit closer. But look at all these things we can do. Oh, okay. So here we go. Boom. Now we see it's been turned on its axes. We have a few things that we can try. So there's quite a few different ones. We can do a pie chart, a bunch of different things. Depending on what your data is, you want to pick a visual that's going to best display graphically your data so it's easier to understand. The whole point of a chart is to make this data set easier to understand. And sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we can see clearly that there's more male students returning than female, and also with new students. And so there's a trend there without actually having to figure out which column and which row these numbers are. We can just see it right there, boom, very quickly. So that works. So let's get out of types of different charts. Stacking, well, that's a different way that you can do all of this. And so we have a bunch of different things that we can change and we can and set up differently for this to represent. But we also have this customized one. And look at this, chart style. So now we can change the background color, we can change the fonts, we can make it 3D. Let's just click that one for the fun of it. Oh, hey, that's kind of cool. All right, so the chart style. So we have all of these different options here. Here's chart axis and titles. This is how we move around all of these different things here and put them in different places and so on and so forth. We have different fonts, different sizes. We can make it bold. Here's the series that we can deal with. Here's the legend. Here's the horizontal axis. And this is something that if you're going to use a lot of charts, spend some time and investigate what's here, because I promise you, even if you have perfect photographic memory and you memorize every single feature that's here, come back in 2 weeks and there'll be a few new ones. Or maybe one of your favorite ones might disappear. That does happen sometimes too. But just know this, that the very smart men and women, Google engineers, are trying to make changes, in this case to Google Sheets, to make it a better program. And so if they do remove something, chances are they've put something else back that makes more sense. So that's a very quick introduction to charts. Just know you could spend 4 hours easily changing all of this stuff. And yeah, sure enough. So if this is 325 and we change that to 145 and we hit enter or click somewhere else, watch what happens to our bar chart, because our bar chart is connected to the data that's up here. And so just remember, that's the whole point of all of this. So we simply take our data and we graphically represent it so it's easier to understand relationships. So we can see that 145 is much less than 248. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much for coming to join us today to kind of go over some basics of Google Sheets. The good news is Google Sheets will do just about everything you need it to do. Unfortunately, though, you have to have some experience. So hopefully after watching this presentation, you have a little bit better understanding of formulas and functions. But then if we recognize that we could go into Excel with flash fill, a narrow form of artificial intelligence, we can manipulate data all day long and then just simply make that Excel spreadsheet into a Google spreadsheet like we did earlier today in this presentation. And so we can do whatever we want in Google Sheets, and we can even get help from Excel because Google allows us to use Microsoft products in Google Drive, and that's pretty slick. So with that, just want to say thank you so much for coming to join us today. Thank you so much.